Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that you find these videos helpful. I passed out to all of the retesters in my class today a packet of worksheets entitled We Are Ready, and they are labeled days 1 through day 16. Very simply put, I'm going to be making a video with the solutions to each of those worksheets, and those videos will be separated by worksheet. So this video will be the solutions to the day 1 worksheet. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these worksheets are aimed towards the 3rd, 4th, and 5th tests that you take in your retest, which is part 2 of the ISTEP 10. If the worksheet says no calculator at the top, you should complete it without a calculator, because that is mimicking questions from the no calculator section of the ISTEP. So, without further ado, here we go. The first problem on the day 1 worksheet says determine the product of the problem 4 to the 3rd power times 4 to the 6th power. This is banking on you remembering the product of powers rule, which we covered in first semester and you covered in Algebra 1, which says if you have two powers with the same base and you are multiplying them together, the result will be that base with those exponents added together. So in this case, what they are searching for you to do is to realize that this would be 4 to the 3 plus 6 power, and they would be looking for you to give the answer 4 to the 9th power. Now, chances are good that this particular type of question would probably be multiple choice. So what you need to remember is that when you multiply two power expressions, if the base is the same, you add the exponents. They would not want you then to put this in the calculator and give them the value of 4 to the 9th power. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking to see whether or not you know that rule. And by the way, that rule is not on the reference sheet. There are a number of other exponent rules that could be covered as well. The power of powers rule and the quotient of powers rule, both of which you should know how to deal with. But just in case you don't, here are those rules. The power of powers rule says that if you have a power raised to a 2nd power, you multiply those exponents. So for example, if you had 3 squared cubed, you would do 3 to the 2 times 3, or 3 to the 6th power. The quotient of powers rule is very similar to the power of power or product of powers rule. Remember, product means multiply, quotient means divide. So in this case, you would have a power on the top and the bottom of a fraction which have the same base, in which case you would be expected to know that you're supposed to subtract the top exponent minus the bottom exponent. These are very basic exponent rules. They are not on the reference sheet. You are supposed to know them. Now, in addition to that, you should also know that anything raised to the 0 power is equal to 1. So if you don't know those things, you need to start working on remembering them. Moving on to number 2. Number 2 on this worksheet is asking you to simplify this expression, and then it's asking you to add or subtract, but it's really the same thing, a pair of trinomial polynomials. So the second we see this minus sign, we should think to ourselves, oh, that means we have a -1, and we need to get rid of these parentheses before we add like terms. So we should be distributing -1 to each of those 3 terms. Now, don't get confused. This is not a multiplication problem. It is a subtraction problem. So what we're trying to do here is get rid of the parentheses, which the first set of parentheses, we can just drop the parentheses because there's a +1 in front of that. And on the second one, we would distribute the negative, which would change all three signs in that second set of parentheses. So that would become negative 8x squared plus 3x minus 5. Then we would combine like terms. 6x squared minus 8x squared is negative 2x squared. X plus 3x is 4x, because again there's an invisible 1 in front of this x. 1 plus 3 is 4. And negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7. So this is the answer we're looking for, negative 2x squared plus 4x minus 7. Now remember that on the ISTEP you have an answer eliminator tool that would come in handy on most multiple choice questions. For instance, when you added 6x squared and negative 8x squared to get negative 2x squared, that should eliminate answer B immediately. So if you use your answer eliminator, you could eliminate that option. Then when you did x plus 3x and you got 4x, guess what? Your answer eliminator then could have eliminated 2 more of the answers. So you don't even necessarily have to do that entire problem to get the correct answer. The correct answer is D. Number 3 on that worksheet is asking you to factor this trinomial in order to get the 2 factors of the left side. So this is a little bit tricky because this is a trinomial where your a value is not equal to 1. Okay, your a value is 6, your b value is 1, and your c value is negative 2. Remember that what you're supposed to do when you factor is you're supposed to look for factors of a times c, which would be negative 12. Okay, that's a times c. You're supposed to look for a pair of numbers that multiply to that number and add to b, which in this case is positive 1. So if we look at all of the numbers that multiply to negative 12, which there are a few pairs of numbers that work for this, total of 6 pairs of integers multiply to equal negative 12, and then we add those pairs together, we find that only one pair is equal to positive 1, which that's the pair of numbers we're going to use. However, we don't just stick those into an answer because this is factoring by grouping. Anytime we have a not equal to 1, we're going to do factor by grouping, which means we're going to take that middle term, the 1x, and we're going to break it up into 2 separate terms. So we have the 6x squared out front still. Then we have minus 3x plus 4x minus 2. Now you might be asking, where the heck did you get negative 3 and positive 4x from? Well, first of all, those two numbers add up to 1. But notice, those are the numbers I select from my list, negative 3 and positive 4. So then what I do is I go in and I group the first 2 terms and group the second 2 terms. And I have to apologize, my pen is acting up a little bit. And I factor out the GCF from each set of parentheses. So the first set of parentheses, both of those terms can be divided by 3x. So I factor out a 3x, which would leave me with 2x minus 1. And from the second set of parentheses, I can factor out a 2, which would leave me with 2x minus 1. Now this is no longer a 4-term polynomial. Now it's a 2-term polynomial. We have that's a term and this is a term. And those 2 terms have something in common as well. They both have 2x minus 1. So then I would factor out the GCF again, which would be 2x minus 1. And I would be left with what's in front of the parentheses, 3x plus 2. This is the factored form of that trinomial. So if we look up here and use our answer eliminator, it doesn't have a 2x plus 1 in it. So that eliminates A and D. And it doesn't have a 3x minus 2 in it. The answer is C. Okay, finally we have here an equation as a word problem. It says Driana is a hairstylist. I don't know where they get these names, but that's pretty ISTEP accurate, random name. Is a hairstylist at a local salon. She receives a total of $210. That's important information. We're going to need that number for cutting hair all day. Each haircut is $15. So there's another number. Based on this information, how many haircuts did she do in one day? Now you might be thinking, well, that's easy. I just divide. Well, you're right. But they're hoping that you're going to realize that 15 is a slope and that 210 is a y value. Okay? Obviously, she doesn't get any money just for showing up, so b is equal to 0. So they're expecting you to realize that this is an equation in the form y equals mx. Now, if you don't realize that, you just divide, you're still going to get the right answer. Because you have 210 equals 15x, and then to solve that equation, you divide by 15. So if we divide each side by 15, we would get x is 14, which indicates that she had 14 haircuts that day. Again, I really hope, I have faith in what you guys can do. I know you can pass this test. You have to believe it. So I hope these videos help, guys. I hope they do. I hope you're watching them. I hope you're using them. And I hope you're preparing yourself for this next round of ISTEP, because you will defeat the ISTEP. See you in video 2.